Chapter 231. Earl didn't sleep well that night. In his dreams, Belle's tear-streaked face, pale, bloodied, and full of sorrow, kept haunting him, demanding to know why he was so heartless. He woke up with a jolt. When he glanced at the time, he realized it was already 10 a.m. The dorm was mostly empty, except for Isaac, who sat at his desk, buried in his Marxism textbook. Everyone else had disappeared to who knew where. Last semester, Isaac failed one of his modules after Earl got caught covering attendance for him. Now, every morning, the first thing he did was study for the upcoming makeup exam. Earl groggily got out of bed, washed up, and was about to sit down when the door suddenly burst open. Joshua stormed in, looking like he had urgent news. He asked, "Earl, what's the deal with you and Belle?" Earl frowned slightly. "What about it?" Joshua huffed as if he couldn't believe Earl was out of the loop. "This morning, I heard from the shared dorm room that Belle has gotten back together with Andres." "So, is it really over between you two?" Earl's entire body tensed for half a second before he forced a casual smile. There was never anything to begin with. How could there be anything to end? "Oh, I see." Joshua gave him a look of pity, then clapped him on the shoulder. "There's plenty of fish in the sea, Earl. Don't waste your time on one girl. If you're feeling down, just say the word, I'll take you to Rose Spa to blow off some steam. If that's not your thing, I'll even sponsor you one of those deluxe gel dolls that's extra soft and of premium quality." Earl laughed. "Did you forget what happened to Samuel when he bought one? The whole dormitory found out, and he turned into the campus joke for months. Don't drag me into your nonsense." He sounded light-hearted and unaffected. But in truth, the moment he had heard Belle's name, something had twisted inside him. He had been so sure of his decision. But now, a strange weight settled in his chest, making it hard to breathe. His mind replayed their moments together, her teasing smiles, the way she had kissed him with reckless abandon, the deep emotion in her eyes when she looked at him. He recalled her passion, her sensuality, and the sweetness and laughter she brought into his life. Only now did it hit him how much those moments had meant. If it had all been an act, then Belle was the greatest actress in the world. But he knew her better than that. She was unpredictable, mischievous, and sometimes infuriatingly playful. But she wasn't fake. Her feelings had been real. But, what did it matter now? Even if regret gnawed at him, the decision had already been made. Earl had chosen his path. And in doing so, he had become nothing more than a fleeting presence in Belle's life. He was like a ripple in her story. Life was about choices. To gain something, you had to give up something else. There was no such thing as a perfect ending where you got everything. The universe always balanced the scales. Everything had a price. Perhaps, years from now, when he thought back to this whirlwind of a girl, he would finally be able to smile at the memory. But for now, all he could do was move forward. The afternoon bell rang. It was time for Earl and Bianca to host their campus broadcast together. Chapter 232. When Earl walked into the radio station and saw Bianca already there, his mood lifted slightly. She was wearing a soft beige dress paired with low heels, her long, flawless legs glowing under the afternoon sun. A gentle breeze lifted strands of her silky hair, and her bright, expressive eyes shimmered with warmth. Just seeing her like this made the weight in Earl's chest feel a little lighter. Today's program was based on listener requests. Many had written in, asking for another live duet of Timeless Years, the same piece that had left a lasting impression on everyone the last time they had played it. Most listeners still believed that Bianca's duet partner had been a computer. It was a testament to just how skilled Earl was with the guitar. Now, after more practice and time working together, their performance had reached another level of perfection. Their timing was seamless, and their chemistry was undeniable. When the final note faded, the response was instant. Messages flooded in, praising how much more polished and moving the performance sounded compared to the last time. Time and practice had only strengthened their rhythm, making their music more fluid and more connected. Bianca remained calm and composed, as she always did, but there was a faint flush of satisfaction on her cheeks. As always, the best moments slipped by too quickly. The half-hour broadcast ended before Earl even realized it. Watching her pack up, preparing to leave, he felt a sudden hesitation, a flicker of reluctance. Without thinking, he spoke up. "Bianca, do you have time? Do you want to grab dinner together?" She glanced up, a small, amused smile tugging at her lips. "Is there something you need?" Earl hesitated. There wasn't anything specific. He just wanted to spend more time with her. Bianca seemed to understand immediately. She smiled, her tone light as she said, "How about next time?" "My treat. I have something I need to take care of today." She slung her bag over her shoulder, gave him a soft goodbye, and walked out. Earl stood there for a moment, watching her go. From her perspective, it had been a simple, polite answer. She really did have something important to do. But from his perspective, it was a rejection. Not harsh, not cruel, but a rejection all the same. Out of habit, he walked over to the window, watching as she disappeared down the steps. Then, something caught his eye. A man stood waiting for her. Tall, sharply dressed in all black, carrying an air of effortless confidence. Even from a distance, Earl could sense the presence he carried, self-assured, powerful, striking. There was something magnetic about him, a quiet dominance that made it impossible to ignore him. The moment Bianca spotted him, her face lit up. Earl had never seen her smile like that before. Not even around Leslie. They exchanged a few words, and then, to Earl's surprise, the man reached out and gently ruffled Bianca's hair. She flinched slightly but didn't pull away. Instead, she let him do it. Then, she laughed, a light, musical sound, and walked off with him, her steps easy and her posture relaxed. Earl didn't move. A hollow feeling settled in his chest. For so long, he had told himself that if he just worked hard enough, if he just got close enough, one day, he might have a chance with her. But the casual way she had turned him down today, along with the way she had looked at that man and the way she had let him touch her so naturally, made it all painfully clear. Bianca wasn't just out of reach. She had never even been on the same path as him. No matter how much he tried, he was chasing something that was never meant to be his. Chapter 233. Earl had always considered himself sharp, but when it came to Bianca, he constantly felt like he was chasing shadows. She was unreadable, distant, and impossible to pin down. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to grasp what went on in her mind. Compared to that, Belle's warmth, playfulness, and complete inability to hide her emotions seemed much easier and closer to him. Every time he thought of her, memories flooded in. He thought of her beauty, her tenderness, and the way she had cared for him so openly. The emotions he had once been so certain of for Bianca were starting to shift. Suddenly, he realized something about himself. He had always been the type to fall too easily and chase after fleeting affections. He had pursued Faye, only to be left behind. He had once been infatuated with Anna, only to be dumped without hesitation. Now, after everything with Belle, he found himself estranged from her as well. And Bianca, she was more unattainable than ever. The frustration and regret were worse than anything he had felt before. He had always believed that heartbreak had hardened him, that he had grown immune to the sting of rejection. But right now, he knew he had been wrong. It was only now, standing in the aftermath of his choices, that he truly understood, Belle had left a mark on him. No matter what had happened, she had already carved a space in his heart, one he couldn't seem to erase. When Earl returned to his dorm, the door was slightly ajar. That was odd. He knew Isaac and Joshua were out playing basketball. Ronnie had been practically living with his girlfriend, already half moved out of the dorm. Samuel worked late every night to support his mother and sister. And Luca had rented his own place to focus on his music career and barely showed up for classes, let alone the dorm. So, who was inside? Earl gently pushed the door open. A familiar scent filled the air. He looked up, and there she was. She was sitting at his desk, completely at ease, a book in her hands. Her long, silky hair cascaded down her shoulders, effortlessly elegant. The soft glow of the evening sun traced her delicate features, making her look almost unreal. When she heard the door open, Belle turned to face him, her bright eyes locking onto his. "You're back," she said, her voice light and natural. "Do you want to grab dinner? And then maybe go for a run?" Earl froze. Everything about this moment felt wrong. After what had happened last night, after what he had heard this morning, how could she be sitting here, acting like nothing had changed? He studied her face carefully, trying to find some hint of hesitation, some sign that she was pretending. "Why are you here?" he asked, still processing. "Didn't you get back together with Andres? If that was true, then why was she here? And why did she sound so casual, like they hadn't just walked away from each other?" Belle blinked, clearly catching the flicker of surprise on his face. She tilted her head slightly and asked softly, "What? Are you saying you didn't want to see me again?" Earl hesitated. "No, that's not," he stopped himself, shaking his head. The truth was, her sudden appearance made him happier than he was willing to admit. Even if he had chosen to walk away, even if he had convinced himself, it was for the best, a part of him had already made space for her. She had become a constant presence in his life, whether he wanted to acknowledge it or not. But he couldn't ignore the rumors. He had to ask. "This morning," he said carefully, "Joshua told me that you and Andres got back together. So, I just assumed you wouldn't show up again." Belle watched him closely, reading every shift in his expression. At his words, she pouted slightly. "What? Are you disappointed I didn't get back together with Andres?" Earl paused, then exhaled. "No." His voice was quiet, barely audible. But Belle heard it. A flicker of something unreadable passed through her eyes before she smiled, pretending not to have caught it. What was that? You're mumbling. I didn't hear you." Earl changed the subject instead. "Why are you here, Belle? What do you want?" Belle walked up to Earl and carefully studied him before speaking softly. "Who else could I turn to if not you? I came to tell you something. This morning, Andres found me downstairs by the dorm, and he wanted to get back together. But I thought about it for a long time before I gave him my answer." Hearing this, Earl immediately tensed up. Chapter 234. Earl asked, What did you say to him? Did you agree?" Belle nodded lightly. "Yeah, I said yes." Earl's heart clenched violently. So, Joshua's news was right. Belle had gotten back together with Andres. This felt like a punch to Earl's gut. The hope that had been quietly growing inside him was crushed in an instant, replaced by a heavy, suffocating weight. His face darkened, his usual calm cracking under the blow. He tried to force a smile, to pretend this didn't affect him, but it came out so stiff and forced that it looked worse than if he had just remained expressionless. For the first time in a long time, he felt his heart ache in a way he hadn't thought possible. When had she become this important to him? He had always prided himself on being rational, on keeping his emotions in check. But at this moment, none of that mattered. The pain cut through him too deeply. And now, had she come all this way just to tell him this, rub it in his face, and ensure he knew she had moved on? Maybe it was her way of getting back at him for what had happened last night, for the way she had left in tears. But even knowing that, Earl refused to let her see how much this was breaking him. He forced himself to lift his head, his expression settling into its usual composure. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "Was there something else you needed?" Belle didn't look away. Her gaze was steady, searching, and almost unreadable. Then, in a voice so soft it almost didn't match her usual energy, she said, "I came to tell you something important." Earl had already braced himself. He had already guessed what Belle was about to say. It was nothing more than her telling him that she had completely moved on, that she was now leaving him behind, and that she would never speak to him again. Earl would be left to cry alone under his covers. To him, Belle's behavior seemed more like a display of defiance. Even though he had been a bit harsh with Belle's words yesterday, deep down, Earl felt a heavy sense of oppression. He knew it was all his fault. "I get it. But you don't need to rub it in my face. All right, I've gotten your message. If there's nothing else, then you can leave. I have a lot to take care of." But Belle gently shook her head, her soft eyes locked on Earl and her voice as gentle as a stream. "I came to tell you something important. I haven't been able to let go of you, so I came back." Her words were filled with so much affection and tenderness that they warmed Earl's heart. Was she asking to reconcile? Earl was stunned, his body frozen for a moment, and a flash of surprise and joy crossed his eyes. He stammered, You're kidding, right? Belle looked at him seriously, her gaze filled with determination as tears silently streamed down her face. Do you really think I'm joking right now? It didn't feel like a joke at all. Earl, his voice trembling slightly, asked, then. What about Andres? His heart was filled with confusion and worry. But Belle shook her head again, tears welling up in her eyes. Then, suddenly, she lightly punched Earl's chest and, in a choked voice, said, I don't want to think about him right now. Let him be. I just want to be with you. I want to go running with you, eat with you, go to class with you, and leave class together with you. No matter what, I want us to be together. Chapter 235. Belle's words revealed a sense of helplessness and finality. Earl watched as tears streamed down her face, his chest tightening. Without thinking, he reached for a tissue and gently wiped them away. At that moment, an unexpected warmth filled his heart. For the first time in a long while, he felt something close to happiness. It didn't matter if Belle had once played games with him or if she had wavered. What mattered was now. There was no point dwelling on what he couldn't have. It was time to cherish what was right in front of him. Feeling his touch, Belle let out a soft laugh, her voice regaining its usual tenderness. Big Bun, from now on, don't call me Belle anymore. Just call me B, okay? I like the way it sounds. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at him, full of hope and happiness. Earl nodded, he understood. Calling her B felt more intimate and affectionate, just like the way she always called him Big Bun. It was something that belonged only to the two of them. A light blush crept up Belle's cheeks. She quickly turned away, running to the desk where she had placed a carefully packed meal. Have you eaten yet? I've brought you dinner. She had put real thought into the meal, making sure it was filled with all of his favorite dishes. This wasn't just food, it was her way of caring for him. After dinner, they went running together in the hills behind campus. The night deepened, and by the time they finally parted ways, neither of them wanted to say goodbye. Back in her dorm, Belle had just finished showering when she overheard Luna talking on the phone with her boyfriend. When she walked past, Luna hung up and turned to her, raising an eyebrow. Belle, were you with that guy again? She asked, her voice laced with confusion. Didn't you get back together with Andres this morning? There was clear disbelief in her tone. Belle didn't even flinch. She met Luna's gaze and answered calmly, I have no idea what you're talking about. Andres and I were never going to happen. She had no interest in explaining herself. No one else needed to understand what was between her and Earl. Luna sighed, shaking her head. She knew she wouldn't be able to change Belle's mind. Still, she believed that love without financial security was nothing but an illusion. And Earl, he didn't seem like someone who could ever give Belle the future she deserved. The next morning, Belle woke up early. She carefully applied her makeup, making sure every detail was perfect. Today, she wanted to look her best for Earl. She wanted to make sure that he only had eyes for her, that no other woman could ever take his place in his heart again. Just as she was about to leave, a sudden presence at the door made her freeze. A woman stood there, wearing oversized sunglasses and dressed in elegant, expensive clothes. Then, with a graceful motion, the woman removed her sunglasses, revealing a face that Belle knew all too well. It was her mother, Clarice Clark. Belle, Clarice said with a cool smile. I'm here to see you. Belle froze for a moment, forcing a weak smile. Mom, what are you doing here? Don't you want to see me? Clarice scanned Belle from head to toe before saying coolly, your dad said you have a boyfriend. Belle stiffened, a flash of panic crossing her eyes. She said hesitantly, no, I don't. But Clarice could easily see that Belle was lying. Her expression immediately turned cold, and in a low voice, she said, get in the car. I need to talk to you. Chapter 236. Belle got into the car without another word. The Volkswagen Phaeton glided away, disappearing down the road. Meanwhile, across campus, Earl was rudely woken up by the noise in his dorm. With no morning classes, Ronnie was glued to his computer, deep in an intense gaming session, while Joshua was messing around with the DSLR he had bought back in freshman year. Samuel, curious, leaned over and asked, "What's up with the camera? Are you going on a trip or something?" Joshua shook his head. "I'm just checking if it still works. I'm planning to take it to the car exhibition. The International Exhibition Center is hosting a big car exhibition," Samuel said, knowing about it. "The tickets for the exhibition must be hard to get, right?" Joshua smirked. "Do you want to go? I can get you a ticket if you're interested." Samuel practically jumped out of his chair. He had never been to a car exhibition before, and the thought of seeing all those luxury cars up close was too tempting to pass up. At the mention of free tickets, Isaac, who had been suffering through his Marxism textbook, immediately tossed his textbook under the bed and joined in. "Count me in. I heard this year's lineup includes some of the most high-end, cutting-edge models in the world." "No problem," Joshua said. "I'll hook you guys up." Earl, still lounging in bed, glanced over at the car magazine sitting on his nightstand, the one sent over by Patrick. The magazine featured detailed previews of the cars being showcased at the Alnugo car exhibition. Patrick had even suggested for Earl to pick one he liked so they could secure it as Drakengard Games' official company car. Earl had already set his sights on a newly released Bentley SUV, one of the brand's most luxurious and high-performance models yet. The price tag was jaw-dropping, but surprisingly, Patrick had come to the same conclusion. They had tentatively decided on it. The morning flew by, and Earl headed to his psychology elective in the afternoon after his finance class. Once class was over, he made his way toward the radio room, preparing for another live broadcast with Bianca. As he walked, the image of Bianca with that tall, confident man from the day before resurfaced in his mind. A dull ache settled in his chest. Seeing her smile so naturally, so openly, at another man, it stung. But he forced himself to push the thought away. If that guy was her boyfriend or even just someone pursuing her, then there was no point in holding on to false hope. Besides, Earl had Belle. The moment she had looked him in the eye and said, she couldn't let go, so she came back, something inside him had melted. Chasing after someone distant and unattainable felt pointless when there was someone right in front of him, someone who had chosen him. Belle wasn't any less stunning than Bianca, she was just different. Thinking about it, Earl felt a rare sense of warmth spread through him. His mood, which had been clouded since yesterday, finally started to lighten. When he arrived at the radio room, Bianca was already there, as always. She greeted him with a smile. "I've prepared a few speeches and some audience engagement topics for today. Also, we got a few song requests. Some listeners have specifically asked for a duet from us." She handed him the show schedule. Earl glanced through it and noticed that the last few song requests were all romantic duets. It was probably a man using the radio station to confess to a girl. The station usually accommodated such requests. Earl gave a small nod, and they began the broadcast. By now, after an entire semester of working together, their synergy was effortless. The two romantic duets they performed flowed seamlessly, their voices blending in perfect harmony. The emotion behind the songs was palpable, making it easy to get lost in the moment. When the second song ended, Bianca poured him a cup of water and spoke in her usual gentle tone. "We still have one more song left to sing." Chapter 237. Earl took the cup of water just as footsteps echoed from outside. Leslie walked in uninvited. The moment Bianca saw him, her brows knitted slightly. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone cool. Leslie had originally planned to wait for her downstairs, wanting to confront her about why she had been avoiding him lately. But after hearing her duet with Earl, jealousy had clearly gotten the better of him. His expression was dark as he muttered, "Nothing, I'm just thirsty, so I thought I'd come up and grab a drink." He walked straight to the water dispenser and poured himself a glass, but his gaze never left Earl. His eyes were sharp, filled with an unspoken warning for Earl to stay away from her. Earl sighed internally. So, Leslie saw him as a rival now. What a joke. There was nothing between him and Bianca, yet somehow, he was the one taking the blame. And if Leslie had actually seen the man Bianca had been with yesterday, the tall, confident guy she had smiled so brightly at, he'd probably be losing his mind right now. Earl almost felt like clearing up the misunderstanding. Even though he didn't like Leslie, he disliked that other guy even more, the one who had effortlessly captured Bianca's attention in a way neither of them ever could. For a brief moment, Earl considered telling Leslie everything, just to send him after the real competition. But he dismissed the thought just as quickly because he thought it was petty of him to do so. And if Bianca found out, she would definitely not forgive him. So, instead of dealing with any of this, Earl took a sip of water and headed for the bathroom, deciding to just remove himself from the situation entirely. As soon as he stepped away, his phone buzzed. He then saw a picture of Belle's smiling face lit up the screen. She was calling him. "Big Bun, when are you coming back? I want to have dinner with you," she said sweetly. Ever since they had made things official, there was a certain glow in her voice whenever she spoke to him, as if he was the only thing in her world. "There's one more song left," Earl replied. "Then I'm done for the night." "Is it a love song?" Her tone instantly shifted. Earl hesitated. That pause was enough. Belle knew. She stomped her foot in frustration. "Don't sing it. Just come back." "But, no buts," she said with a huff. Then, after a brief silence, her voice softened. "Earl, you know how I feel. When you sing with her, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I just want you to be with me. Can you come back and spend time with me instead?" Belle was always confident and never insecure. But when it came to Bianca, even she felt a rare sense of unease. She wasn't afraid of losing to just anyone, but Bianca was different. Even if nothing was going on between them, Belle couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to keep Earl close. Earl's resolve wavered immediately. Her voice, her plea, it was impossible to ignore. His heart softened. "All right, I'll tell them, then I'll come find you." Belle's mood instantly lifted. "Okay, I'll be waiting for you downstairs." Hanging up, Earl let out a breath and headed back into the studio. At some point, Leslie had left. Bianca sat at the desk, waiting for him, her usual calm expression back in place. Her demeanor had shifted now that Leslie was gone. She even smiled warmly as she said, "All right, Earl. Let's get ready for the last." But, before she could finish, Earl cut her off. Chapter 238. "I won't be able to sing the next song, Bianca. A friend is waiting for me," Earl said. Bianca blinked in surprise. She had gotten used to Earl staying behind after every broadcast and always leaving only after she did. Now that he was suddenly cutting the night short, something felt out of place. But she quickly regained her composure and tilted her head slightly with a playful smile. "Are you going on a date?" Earl gave a small smile, neither confirming nor denying it. But his lack of response was answer enough. For a fleeting moment, something unreadable flashed across Bianca's eyes. Then, with a gentle smile, she simply said, "All right then. I won't hold you back. Have fun." She waved him off, turning her back to start preparing for the solo performance. But once Earl's footsteps faded into the distance, she didn't start singing. Instead, she stood there, staring out the window. From where she stood, she could see Earl walking away, meeting Belle just outside the building. She watched as the two of them left together, disappearing into the evening light. Her gaze lowered slightly, and after a long pause, she finally sat back down. Earl and Belle had dinner together before heading out for an evening run. The night was already deep when he walked her back to her dorm. Just as he was about to leave, Belle reached out, gently grabbing his hand. "Big Bun," she said softly, looking up at him with warm, expectant eyes. "From now on, can you come back earlier after your broadcasts? I want to spend more time with you." Her words sent a wave of warmth through him. He smiled, nodding, "I will. Once this semester ends, I won't be doing the broadcasts anymore." The only reason he had joined the campus radio station in the first place was Bianca. But now that she had someone else in her heart, there was no reason for him to stay. Resigning from the radio station had already become part of his plans. Belle's eyes lit up at his answer, her smile sweet and satisfied. Good, she beamed. Then, from now on, if I have time, I'll go and wait for you after your broadcasts, okay? Earl nodded. Without warning, Belle suddenly wrapped her arms around him, catching him off guard. Before he could react, she stood on tiptoe and placed a quick, playful kiss on his lips. While Earl and Belle's relationship was quietly deepening, his work had also reached a critical stage. Panzer Saga and 2 other games had reached a stable operating phase. But the limitations of small-scale games were starting to show. The initial hype was fading, and the industry's rampant piracy problem was taking a toll on their profits. Given the realities of the domestic gaming market and Drakengard Games' limited resources, launching a full-scale battle against piracy wasn't realistic. Instead, the team had to focus on patching and updating the games, trying to retain as much of their audience and revenue as possible. Meanwhile, the development of their large-scale game had entered its final stretch. With his unparalleled creativity and vision, Earl had his hands in every aspect of the project, from grand world building to the tiniest character details. Even with his boundless energy, he found himself stretched thin. Time was slipping through his fingers. However, according to Patrick, Drakengard Games was close to securing a major deal with a powerful corporate group. Negotiations were nearly complete. All that was left was for Earl and Patrick to attend the final signing. With Belle in his life and Drakengard Games demanding more and more of his time, Earl began reshaping his priorities. He had once been the first to arrive at the radio station and the last to leave. Now, he was the last to show up. And the moment the broadcast ended, he was out the door. Sometimes, he didn't even wait for the last song, requesting early leave from Bianca before slipping away. Whenever she had time, Belle would wait for him outside. Together, they would leave the radio room behind, heading off for dinner and long walks under the city lights. Chapter 239. Belle was attending a class event off campus for the day. After his afternoon classes, Earl made his way to the radio station. Bianca was already there, having arrived early to prepare for the broadcast. The program that day had an interesting lineup. A bold female student had requested a love song to confess to her crush. Another guy dedicated happy birthday to his best friend. After that, there were poetry readings and a few news segments, and then the broadcast would be wrapped up. Halfway through, Earl realized there wasn't much left for him to do. He turned to Bianca and said, "If there's nothing else, I'd like to take the rest of the day off. I might not be able to come by for the next couple of days either, so I'll need you to cover for me." Bianca, who had been mid-broadcast, paused and looked at him. She asked, "You've been leaving early a lot lately," she noted. "Let me guess, are you off to meet Belle again?" She had picked up on their relationship pretty quickly, especially since Belle had made a habit of waiting for Earl after every broadcast. Bianca's comment carried a teasing edge, but her tone was light. Earl didn't deny it. He simply smiled. Now that Belle had met Bianca, there was no need to hide anything anymore. The moment he stopped seeing Bianca as something unattainable, the need to be discreet had disappeared. Bianca glanced at him before turning away, her voice calm as she said, "Go ahead. I'll handle things here. But Earl, having a girlfriend is important, sure. But don't forget about the people who care about you, too." "What?" Earl blinked. Bianca's words caught him off guard. People who cared about him. What did she mean by that? Bianca must have realized how her words might be taken because she let out a soft chuckle and added, "Never mind. Just go. I need to finish the broadcast." Earl didn't press the matter. As he walked out, he found himself turning her words over in his mind, trying to make sense of them. With Belle out for the day, Earl ate dinner alone before heading to the campus track. Dressed in the athletic gear Belle had bought for him, he set off for his usual run. Ever since he and Belle had started running together, it had become a habit. The back trail was nearly 2 miles long, winding through trees and open spaces. After 2 laps, he found an empty patch of grass and sat down, unscrewing his water bottle. The evening air was cool. Stars dotted the night sky, stretching endlessly above him. Lying down, Earl let his thoughts drift. His mind wandered to the past, the way he and Belle had started off bickering and constantly trying to outdo each other. And now, they were together. Fate worked in strange ways. He thought about Belle, her beauty, her fiery personality, and the way she looked at him, so full of love. A soft warmth settled in his chest. For the first time, he was really experiencing love. Not just some fleeting crush, not just a moment of infatuation, but something deep, something that felt real. Maybe this was why people lost their minds over love and why so many fools got caught up in heartbreak. Lying there under the night sky, he found himself missing her already. After a while, the night grew late, and the sounds of insects filled the air. Just as Earl was about to leave after getting enough rest, an unexpected noise came from a nearby grove, accompanied by a man's lecherous chuckle and a woman's voice. Earl felt like he'd stumbled upon something unexpected. The mountains at the back of the campus were usually deserted, and given how hot the weather was, it wasn't too surprising that someone might be out there. But then again, with all the flowers, plants, and trees around, weren't they worried about the bugs? Curiosity getting the better of him, Earl stealthily made his way toward the source of the noise. Chapter 240. Earl moved with careful, silent steps. He stayed in the shadows, hidden from view, making sure no one noticed his presence. When he was about 30 feet away, he stopped. His sharp eyes cut through the dim light, giving him a clear view of what was happening. And what he saw left him stunned. This wasn't just a couple sneaking around in the dark. There were a total of 3 people. One of the men was none other than Leslie, who had been desperately pursuing Bianca. Earl couldn't believe it. Leslie, who appeared so respectable on the outside, was actually this despicable behind closed doors. The other man, whom Earl had briefly met at Bianca's birthday party, was named Christopher Jenner. The woman was Joey. The 3 of them lay sprawled out in the grass, catching their breath after whatever they had just done. Then, Leslie said with a sneer, "That bitch thinks she's so untouchable. One of these days, she's gonna be begging me for mercy." Christopher let out a crude laugh. "Come on, Leslie, you've been talking big for months. When are you finally gonna seal the deal? Relax, it's only a matter of time. Or," Christopher suggested, "we could just take what we want. Why waste any more time?" For a moment, Leslie hesitated. "I don't know. Her family's got some influence." Christopher scoffed. How much influence could they really have? "Look, we're all just waiting for you to make a move. Once you get her, we all get to have some fun. Isn't that what brothers do? Share the good times." Leslie's hesitation flickered again, but Christopher wasn't done pushing. "You're not scared, are you?" Christopher taunted. "We've been waiting to get a taste of this, goddess, you keep drooling over." Leslie gritted his teeth. "Fine," he spat. "Tomorrow, I'll make it happen. That's more like it." Christopher grinned. "We've got a party tomorrow at Platinum Hotel. Bring her there, slip something into her drink, and the rest. Well, you know how it goes." Their laughter was vile, dripping with sleaze. A hint of hesitation flashed in Leslie's eyes, which Christopher noticed. Christopher couldn't help but mock him. "Leslie, you aren't really that cowardly, are you? We are all hoping to enjoy the pleasures with you. How about letting us try her?" Leslie clenched his jaw but ultimately nodded. "Fine, watch me, I'll get her out tomorrow. If I don't show her who's in charge, she'll never know who's really calling the shots." Suddenly, a sound came from the bushes. Leslie was startled. "Who's there?" Joey and Christopher were both frightened. Joey trembled as she asked, Do you think we'll get caught?" Christopher quickly urged, "Hurry up. We need to get out of here." The 3 of them bolted, cursing as they went, complaining about getting scratched by the weeds. Hidden in the corner, Earl was seething with frustration. He knew exactly what Leslie and Christopher had been talking about. But when he had tried to sneakily pull out his phone to record the conversation, he accidentally made a noise and alerted them. By the time he realized it, those assholes had already made their escape, and he'd missed the chance to capture anything. Still, Earl had seen enough to understand what kind of person Leslie really was. He couldn't believe that beneath Leslie's rich, romantic facade lay such a dirty, twisted side. What pissed Earl off even more was the fact that, in order to pursue Bianca, Leslie seemed to have teamed up with his shady friends, treating Bianca as if she were their prey. Once they got their hands on her, they'd all share in the spoils, even going so far as to use drugs. After the anger faded, Earl began to calm down. No matter whether Bianca had feelings for him or not, he couldn't let her anywhere near those scumbags. Especially not tomorrow. He couldn't let that happen. The thought of it made him furious. But then, frustration built up again. He hadn't managed to record anything. If only he'd gotten those clips, he could have sent them to Bianca. There's no way she would have stayed with Leslie after seeing that.